All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to this online presentation, which is all about how to make better decisions in our fast-changing world. So we've got some time together, and I'm going to share with you some decision-making techniques and ideas backed by science and backed by research in how to make decisions in really this really rapidly changing world. And you're probably sick of people saying we're living in unprecedented times, and it's only unprecedented because we're all going through it at the same time. But really, over the last decade or so, and especially the last few years, I've worked with a number of organizations in a number of industries, and they are also in their industry, they've been going through a rapid, unprecedented, and unpredictable change. So, what I want to share with you are some of the things that I have used to help people work their way through this change. So, how do you make decisions even though you know that things are going to change? And the trap that a lot of people fall into is when they want to make decisions, if the future is uncertain, what they'll say is, let me only make a short-term decision because I don't know what's going to happen next week, next month, next year. And that's not the right way to do it. We need to make well-informed decisions, even if we don't know exactly what's coming up in our future. And you may have heard people say we're all in the same boat, and that's not really true, is it? We're all in the same storm, but each of us is paddling and navigating our own unique boats. And particularly now, when we throw out all the rule books and we throw out the maps, it's up to us to become really good at decision making and for us to be able to make well-informed decisions. So I want to share with you some ideas today on how to do that. If you're already in my Future Ready Skills program, welcome. Thank you for coming along to this. If you're not, I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end. But what we do is I run these little workshops, online presentations on how to build up little like individual skills each time. And today is all about decision making. Okay, so I like to make my presentations engaging and interactive. I can see people who've already been typing in the chat room. So we're going to use the chat facility for the engagement this way. So there's a Q&A as well, but don't worry about that. If you've got questions, then I'll have plenty of time for you to answer questions, for you to ask questions. Then type them in the chat room and I'll stop at various times and we'll go through some of the questions. My rules of engagement, my 3 rules of engagement for all my online presentations. First of all, I'd like to think a little bit differently. There'll be a chance for you to do some thinking in this presentation, not just later, and also be a bit playful. So there's a couple of exercises. I might even, if we have time, I'll give away a fabulous prize to somebody who's here in the presentation today live. So that's the benefit of being here live. And also, I really want to give you some actions that you can take away and put into practice. So as much as you can, get rid of any distractions around you and get out your pen and paper, finger and iPad, whatever you do to take notes. And let's actually get some really practical ideas that you can put into place for the future. This session is being recorded and the recording will be available later at gihantoldme.com. So make a note of that because you can go to that later and watch the recording. For the rest of it, you don't need to take lots of detailed notes. I'm very happy for you to do that. Very happy for you to take screenshots as we go along as well. So I know there are a lot of people here who I know because we've already got a relationship together. But if you don't know me, my name is Gihan Pereira. I'm a futurist. I help people get ready for the future. So look at trends, but also be ready for the future. And there's a lot more about me at gihanpereira.com. I won't give you any more of my background, except to say that I've worked with a lot of leaders around Australia, around New Zealand, around the world. And a lot of that is around how do you get ready for an uncertain future? And there's just a list of some of them here that you can see. And you can see there's big businesses, small businesses, government, not-for-profit, corporations, and there's a range of them. And many of them face the same issues when they're facing this uncertain future. Okay, so let's do a little bit of interaction. So we're going to do some polls. All right, so here's a nice, easy poll to get started with. So the first poll is, are you decisive? So let me launch the poll for you here. All right, so you see coming up on your screen, very easy, multiple choice, just pick one of the options. And when we get about 80% of the people voted, then I'll stop the poll and share the results. Okay, good. Thank you for voting quickly. So we're up to about 70% already. Fantastic. All right, good. So let me end the poll and share the results. All right, so most people said yes, right? So then you probably figured out by now that you've got some idea. For those who already don't know me, my little quirky sense of humor here. So that was a bit of a joke, right? If you Didn't get that joke? Well, it doesn't get any better. This is we're all living in isolation. So I'm only telling inside jokes now. Okay, so most people reckon they're decisive. And yeah, there's some jokers who say they're not sure. So 11% say they're not sure. Okay, so we'll do a few more interactive exercises as we go along, and they'll be a little bit more serious than that one. In fact, let's get to this first one, which is actually about your decision-making style. So let's look a little bit more seriously at what your decision-making style is. And if you're a leader, you might want to think about what this means for your team. What's your decision-making culture in your team? Because I reckon it falls into one of four categories. So the first kind is the person who doesn't want to make a decision. They just go, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Even if things are happening around me, I don't want to know, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. So these are the people who are resistant to change. They would rather that things didn't change. They always believe, they wish that they were back in the past when things were easier and better and you could walk outside freely. So that's a resistant style. I'm guessing that if you're here in this presentation, that you probably don't fit into that category, but maybe you do, or maybe your team does. The second kind, these are the people who say a fast decision is a good decision. So let's just make a decision and move on. Right? So they're the people who are impulsive. Now, sometimes a fast decision is a good decision, but it's not always true. Okay, so sometimes you can jump ahead without being well informed. This is the second style. The third one is the exact opposite of that. So these are the people who won't make a decision. They're hesitant. There's always one more customer research survey they could do. There's always somebody else they could ask. There's always, let's see what the virus numbers are tomorrow before we make a decision. Okay, so they're the people in academia. It's called the PhD syndrome. So PhD students, they spend years doing their PhD, and they start off with a big burst of energy, and they get through 80–90% of their PhD really well. And then they get to the last bit, and they just never finish it because there's always one more lit review they can do, one more experiment that they can conduct, one more academic they can ask for advice, and so on. So they never get to the end. So you don't want to be too hesitant either, as much as you don't want to be impulsive. What you really want to do is be the decisive person, the person who gets enough information to make a well-informed decision and then acts on it. Okay, so if you think about this in these two quadrants, so you can either go, I'm going to wait, I'm going to act. So you can wait too long before you act, and then you can be guessing, or you can be working on evidence. And again, you can wait for too much evidence, but you also don't want to operate on too little evidence, but just guessing. So if I asked you now, in these four categories, where are you? What's your decision-making style? So let's run this poll as well. And you can choose today whether you're going to do this for yourself, whether you're going to do this for your team, whether you're going to do this for your organization. And it depends on your level of authority and level of responsibility, how you choose to answer that. Okay, so let's run this poll here. So this is a serious poll for once. Let's go to the second poll. What's your decision-making style? Now, let me just launch that here. Okay, so you should see them coming up on your screen now. So which of these four categories do you fall into? Okay, and this is completely anonymous, so be honest, because it'll help you understand yourself, and that'll help you for the rest of this presentation, but also for putting these ideas into action. Okay, again, thank you very much for voting fast. Yeah, good. Okay, so we're up to 80%, which is my cutoff point for me stopping the poll. So I'll give you 3 more seconds. A few more people are, almost everybody's voted. All right, so let me share that. Oh, this is interesting, okay? So again, a lot of people say that they're already in the decisive category, which is great. I think you still get some value from some of the techniques I share with you. And what's interesting is that when I run this, or when I have run this in the past with leaders and their teams, there's a bigger number of people who say they're impulsive or their team is impulsive. And perhaps now, because of the pandemic and because of the circumstances we're living in, we have become a little bit more hesitant before we make decisions. So usually impulsive and hesitant are equal, but it's interesting now that there are fewer people. So 15% of people say impulsive, and 25% roughly say they're hesitant. But it's good to see that more than 50% still say they're decisive. Okay, So we'll have more engagement as we go. So we've got a couple more little engagement activities. But I want to ask you now, so we're not going to do this as a poll, but we're going to do this through chat. So when you have to make a decision, when you're facing some options and you have to make a decision, broadly speaking, what are the things that you do to make decisions? And I'm going to share with you later, next, 3 research-based strategies for making better decisions. But just in the chat room, just share, what do you do? How do you make decisions? So let me tell you 2 of the common things that people say, which the research doesn't bear out. So one of the things that people say is, I'll sleep on it. Okay, I'll sleep on it, give me a bit more time to think about it, and I'll make a better decision tomorrow. And so that's generally not the right thing to do. And if you're really, really impulsive, and sleep on it is just a little bit of a metaphor for, oh, let me get some more information. Another thing that people say is, let's do pros and cons. So I've got to make a decision, take a sheet of paper, rule a line down the middle, write down the pluses and the minuses. And then based on that, if I get more positives and negatives, then I'll go in to the yes, and otherwise I'll go to the no. So that's the technique that's really common, but the research shows it doesn't necessarily give you better decisions. Okay, so in the chat room, can you please share? And by the way, if you've got your chat set to all panelists, if you can change it to all panelists and attendees, so everybody else can see it as well. And let's see, so people are saying talking to staff, work through pros and cons, looking at the facts, analytical, and a really good sanity checker, collect information, get the facts, check the facts and decide, good. Short-term, long-term consequences, talk to trusted colleagues, gut feel, gather the data, decide based on facts. Great, okay. So there's a commonality coming through in the question, in the responses here. So a lot of people saying they're looking at facts and collecting data, evidence-based, listen to information, ask more questions, decide what questions I need to ask first. So this is all great, right? And so sometimes, and we look at like getting facts and data, and the challenge there is you can always look for more facts and data. So you can be a bit too hesitant sometimes. If it's between 2 good choices, in the end, I flip a coin. Yeah, and that's not a bad decision-making technique, even though it sounds a bit frivolous. One of the ways that you can make a good decision when you're down to two seemingly equally good choices is to say, if I've got A and B, I'll flip a coin, and then, based on what the coin says, then you ask yourself, how do I feel now about being forced to choose heads, that option? And that feeling might be all you need to give yourself a little bit of a test to make a better decision. Yeah, okay, great. So great to see so many responses here. Great to see so many people engaging. So let me share with you some research, which is from this book, Decisive, by brothers Chip and Dan Heath. An excellent book. And they talk about research-based decision-making strategies. And I'm going to share with you 3 big ideas from that book. And I'm going to give you one practical example, one practical technique under each one of those 3 ideas. Now, if you've read the book, you may know that there are 4 ideas that the Heath brothers share in that book. So you may go, yeah, why are you cheating us? And only giving us 3. Actually, 2 of them have kind of merged together. So you're actually getting the full content of the book, at least in summary version, in these 3. So here are the 3 decision-making strategies that we'll talk about today. I'll give you some specific techniques under each one. So the first one is to get more options, so to scan wider and look wider for more options. And the next one is that even after you make a decision, but prepare to be wrong and be prepared to change if the world changes around you. And the last one is to get more distance in time and space. And I'll explain what that means and when we get to that point. So we're going to talk about those 3 things. But before we get into decision making, I want to also share with you one principle about not making decisions, because you may have come across this before, that people say, well, not deciding is actually making a decision, because you're still deciding. You're making a decision not to decide. Now, that's kind of true, but it's not always true. So it's not always true that you have to make a decision. And in fact, the psychology, the latest research says that decision making is tiring. It takes up your mental energy. So there's a reason why Steve Jobs always wore black turtleneck sweaters, and apparently Barack Obama always wore the same suit every day, or the same color suit every day, because he said he had to make lots of other decisions during the day. This is one decision he doesn't have to make. So sometimes it's better not to make a decision, but you need to do it in the right circumstances. So one example is with your choice of brand. So some people are lifelong Apple users, some people are Google users, some people, this is a list of, these are some of the Australia's most trusted brands. And people follow these brands because presumably they like the quality of service or whatever it is, but also because when you follow a brand, it gives you an easy decision-making shortcut. So if you say, I'm always going to buy Apple products, it's easy. You've suddenly narrowed down your field from a huge range to this tiny range. And then you say, I'm going to choose within that range. So brands are really useful for decision-making as decision-making shortcuts. Now you can do the same thing. So individually, we have other ways that we brand ourselves, not only from commercial brands, but you may say things like, I'm a vegetarian. And if you are, and this is not me personally, but if you say I'm a vegetarian, then that automatically makes your decision-making easier when you've got this full menu to choose from. If you say I'm an Australian, for each of us who are Australians, that might mean something different, but by saying I'm an Australian, you've automatically narrowed down your decision-making field. You could say that your religious preference, if you do have a religious preference, again, that narrows it down in what you should do and do. Your political affiliation may narrow down what you do and don't do. So that helps you narrow down your decisions. And it doesn't have to be broad things like that. You could decide that at this time, as we're all going through this, what are you going to say about yourself? And these are the sort of things that you can say, I'm going to try this on. Let me try this identity and see how it works. So you may say, I am a leader. You may decide that whether or not you've got leader on your business card or your job title, that as we're going through these uncertain times, you're going to take on that identity of I'm a leader. So how would a leader operate in my family, in my community, with my teammates, with my wider organization, on social media? So if you take on that identity of I'm a leader, it helps you craft your decisions. You might say I'm a good citizen. So what does that mean? Does it mean that I'm going to follow the rules all the time? Especially now, does it mean that I'm going to download the coronavirus app because it's going to help everybody else? Does it mean that there are things that you can say that as a good citizen, these are things that you decide to do. You may decide that you're going to be a teacher, whether or not, again, that's your job title or not. Are you going to be a teacher to your family, to your friends, to your community, to your colleagues? So what identity are you going to take on for yourself during this time? So this is a little bit of a trickier question, but I do want to ask you now to just have a go. Like if you were to try on some identity for yourself, well, which ones would you choose? So what are you going to say? So again, in the chat room, in the chat box, again, if you can say all panelists and attendees, what will you say? So I've decided that I'm going to take on this role of I'm a leader. Now, I'm a teacher is something that I've taken on and I have done the last 20, 25 years. But I'm a leader means that I can say that at the moment, I'm going to take on a leadership role. So what are you going to take on? Let's see what people are typing in. And if it's to all panelists, I'll read it out so everybody else can see it as well. Yep, I'm a teacher. Peter actually is a teacher, yes, but you can be a teacher in other roles as well. A connector, a leader, a listener, a coach, a kind friend. I'm a kind friend. I guess that one. I'm a good citizen and leader. I'm a thought leader and trainer. I'm a leader and influencer. I'm ethical. Yeah, fantastic. So, as much as this presentation is about decision making, by taking on these identities, and again, just try it on, and if you don't like it, pull off the jacket and put on another one. By taking on this identity, it helps your decision making. So this is deciding not so much on brands, but on values. And brands, like really good brands, do tap into values as well. So it's the same idea. So what's your brand? And you can decide whether your brand is something you're going to have for now, or whether it's something that you're going to have forever. And some of these are really worth keeping forever. I'm a leader who shares my experience to help people make better career decisions and lead fuller lives. Yeah, okay. Strategic leader, I'm unique, I'm honest, I'm an activator, coach and listener. Great. Okay, so now let's look at some of the specific decision-making tools. But I reckon if you've got very strong brand, values, identity, whatever you want to call it, it will help your decision-making. Right, so let's look at these three areas. And we'll start with this first one, which is about widening your options. When I started my career out of university, I was a software developer for a small software company here in Perth. And I was a very smart software programmer, so I thought. And so I went into my first job and we were developing computer software that would work with the equipment from mining companies. So the mining companies would have some sort of titrators or detectors or some machinery, and they would send back information to our systems, and we'd have to record them in a database. And so we had this one thing which was a sensor, which was either on or off. And being a smart programmer that I was very clever, and I said I can just store that in one bit. So it's binary, method of binary, 0 or 1. I could say off is 0, on is 1. And by storing it in just one bit, it saves a lot of memory storage, which was at that time quite expensive. And so I thought it's the smartest thing possible. And my boss came to me and he was reviewing my software code, and he said to me, there's no such thing as the number 2. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you never have anything which is just on or off. So if anything you've got, if you think it's the only 2 options, there's always more. It's never on, off, yes, no, male, female, true, false. There's always other options. And he said, like in this example, what is the sensor? You can't get a reading from it. So it's like unavailable or it's flickering. So there's lots of other options. He said, never, 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 never think that there's only 2 options. And so this idea of there's no such thing as the number 2 has always stayed with me. And it's a really useful decision-making tool as well. So whenever if you've got 2 options, you haven't got a decision, you've got a dilemma. So how do you increase the number of options? So there's some interesting research done around this as well. And this research was done, you can see this about 15 years ago, where psychologists asked groups of people to make a decision. And what they did here was they said, here's a really entertaining, high-quality movie, and we could argue for hours about what's the best movie of all time, but let me cut through it and say it's Casablanca, of course, we all know that. But they said, would you like to, and they said, if we give you $15, I'm going to give you 2 options. Would you like to buy this entertaining video at the time, or would you like to not buy it? Easy, right? And when they asked this, because it was a popular movie at the time, most people said, yes, I'll have it. And 1 in 4 said, no, thank you. Then they asked a second group, a slightly different version of this, same movie, same offer, give you $15. Would you like to buy this entertaining video? Or would you like to not buy it, but keep the money for something else? And this time, because people's minds were triggered to other options, more people said, no, I'll actually do something else, right? So exactly the same question in effect, but the psychologist just got people thinking about what else could they do with that $15. And that helped them make a different decision. So anytime you've got this A or B decision, one of the best things that you can do is not sleep on it, but look for other opportunities and look for other options. And so when I run this in a workshop with teams, we actually workshop this. So we say, what's an important decision you're making? And let's now look at other options. So we're going to do this. I think the example will be pretty simple, but some of the things you could ask are, like if you've got 2 options, A and B, what if A wasn't possible? What if B wasn't possible? What if neither of them were possible? Or the other way around, what if you had to do both of them? So you had to do A and B at the same time. What circumstances would make both of those bad decisions? So you've got to find a C, D, E, or F. Or what if you did nothing and you intentionally chose to do nothing? So those are just 6 possible questions you could ask whenever you've got one of these A and B decisions. So let me give you an example here, which is relevant to many of us at the moment. So in our post-pandemic workplace, as we start to relax restriction and some people are starting to go back into the workplace, what will our workplace look like? So there's some people who are working from home, and you could say, I want to continue working from home. Equally, there's some people who are used to working in office, and they want to go back to working in office. So if you've got A as working from home and B as working in office, let's ask these questions. And obviously, I'm sure that if I ask this now, which I will do in the chat room, so what are other options apart from just A and B? Okay, so 100% working from home, 100% working from the office. So and like I've been talking about this, like even pre-pandemic, I've been talking about the idea that we want to have more flexible work and flexible working hours. So let me give you, like, obviously some of the examples are like work from home 1 or 2 days a week. That's really common. And in fact, that may be required. So many workplaces may say work 4 days a week in the office, because that'll mean that we've got 20% fewer people in the office, which means we can have more social distancing and so on. You're part-time, yep, is another one. Work from the park, go to shared office or a co-working space, a mixed model, yep. Offer other flexibility options, 100% home-based. Yeah, in fact, some people have decided that they're going to be 100% home-based. Yes, staggering a return, 50-50, splitting days in the office and home. You may have seen some hotels now, which are suffering through this pandemic. They're offering their rooms available only during the days for people to rent out during the day, so that you don't want to work from the office, from home, because it's too distracting. But you can go and rent out a room at a fancy hotel with privacy, food provided for you, high-speed Wi-Fi, and so on. And so that's another option as well. Local library, yeah. Okay, so all of these options come when you say we're not going to have a hard choice between A or B. And now one of the things that's going to happen is some organizations are going to go back to work and they're going to try and make things happen just the way they used to be in the past. And yet I think we all should be thinking about, especially if you're a leader and you've been used to having your team in the office, think about what work is going to be like if 100% working in the office is no longer the mainstream standard option. It doesn't have to be anymore. Okay, great. Okay, so that's the first one. So the first idea is this idea of widening options and giving yourself more options. I want to check if there are any comments or questions about this. Obviously this working from home, working from an office is a really simple example that I've chosen here. But I've run this workshop with a number of organizations where they've said, wow, we just came up with this option C, D, E, F, G, and when we got to K, we realized that's exactly what we want to do, but we wouldn't have done that until we went through this exercise. So any other comments or questions? If you've got them, just type them in the chat box and I'll answer them. I don't see any coming in yet. Yes, and Nicola asked, could widening options mean that the decision takes longer? Yeah, that's right. Absolutely does. And the temptation is that then you go and become more hesitant. So if you've got that hesitant type, then widening options might be, you might think, fantastic, great, let me just go and get more options. Now, I'm going to show you a technique pretty soon on how you can avoid falling into that particular trap. Okay, let me continue. Okay, in fact, I want to give away a prize. Okay, so I want to give away a copy of my book, Disruption by Design, to one lucky person here. So you'll get an electronic copy of the book, and I'll email it to you later. And to do that, you have to win the prize. Okay, so we're going to play a little bit of a game. So who would like to volunteer? And I'm just going to take the first person whose name comes up in the chat room. It's a pretty easy game. So we'll see who's going to. Okay, Aishwarya. Okay, I can volunteer. Okay, Aishwarya. I hope I pronounced that correctly. All right, so let's see how we do this, right? Is it Aish? Nice, Aish. So Lisa obviously knows who this is. All right, so here's how it works, right? So let me just tell you that I've hidden the prize. So you're going to win this prize, Aish, if you guess correctly. And I'm going to give you so the prize in one of these three boxes, and I'm going to give you two chances to guess which box it's in. And I'm going to do it in a specific way, but I'm going to give you two choices. Okay, so it's in box 1, 2, or 3. So the prize in one of those three boxes. You can believe that I'm telling the truth. I'm just going to ask you to guess which box you think the prize is in. Okay, so Aish, what do you reckon? Just type in the box 1, 2, or 3. Okay, so Aish says box 1. So she thinks it's in box 1. Okay, I'm going to tell you, Aish. So you reckon it's in box 1. I'm going to tell you that it's not in box 2. Okay, so you've guessed box 1, and I'm telling you that it's not in box 2. So it might be 3, might be 1, and I'm going to ask you, do you want to stay with your original decision, which is box 1, or do you want to switch to box 3? Okay, so some people are switching. Okay, Aish is saying, I'll stay. All right, let's ask the audience. Okay, audience. Okay, so Aisha said it's in box 1, and she's going to stay with that. I've told you that it's not in box 2. Which would you rather do? What would you do? You can switch because it improves your chances. Are you going to stay because it improves your chances? Do you think it doesn't matter either way? Or do you just not know and you're just waiting for me to give you the answer? Okay, so we've got 50%, 60% have voted. Okay, so here we go. Most people have voted, so let me end the polling and share the results. Okay, actually, so it's interesting. So the biggest response, 47%, says it doesn't matter either way. And the next one was stay. So stay because it improves your chances of, because I've eliminated box. And the other 20% say switch because it improves your chances. Okay, so Aish, I think you said that you're going to stay, right? So yes, it's a pity because if you had switched, then you would have won the prize. So if you'd switched to 3, you would have won the prize. But as a thank you for playing, I'm going to send you the prize anyway. So she goes, oh no. Okay, so but the question is, like, what does the math say? What does logic say? So obviously there's some chance involved in this, right? There's no question about this, that there's no guarantee that you're going to win the prize every time. But the mathematics says that if you switch under those circumstances that I showed you, then you're twice as likely to win the prize. So let me explain that to you. So the prize could have been in any one of those, behind one of those boxes, right? So H picked box 1. If the prize was in box 3, which it was, because I'd say box 2 is empty, so switching wins. Do you agree with that? If the prize was in box 2, then I'd have to say that box 3 was empty, and again, switching wins. If the prize was in box 1, H would have got it right initially, and unfortunately, in that case, switching would have lost. But 2 out of 3 times, switching wins. Whereas staying with the original choice is only 1 out of 3. So switching wins 2 out of 3 times. Okay, so as a finish, I'm happy to send you a copy of the book. I'll look up your email address later, and I'll send it through to you. If you're still not convinced by that, this is known as the Monty Hall problem. So Monty Hall is a US game show host in the 1950s, and what he would do, like, well, he didn't have a fabulous prize like my book. Every week he'd give away a car. So he'd have these 3 doors, and behind one of the doors was a brand new car, and the other 2 doors had nothing. And so somebody would come up, they'd go through exactly the same sort of process. So Monty would ask them to choose a door. He'd open an empty door, one of the other 2, and then he'd ask them what they want to switch, and most people would stay. This was in the 50s, so this was way before social media and stuff, but people would write in the newspapers, mathematicians would write in and say, you should switch because it doubles your chances. And yet, week after week, most people would choose to stay, even if they've been told that switching doubled their chances. And there are 2 reasons for it. One is that they felt it makes no difference because all you're doing is opening an empty door, but you've already made your initial choice, so you might as well stay with it. Or the other reason was that I'd regret it if I made the choice, the correct choice, and then I switched away from the winning choice and I missed out on winning Gihan's fabulous book. But actually, what I've done is I'm doing you a favor by taking away a bad choice. So another way of thinking of it, if I had 100 boxes and I said, pick one of them, and then I opened 98 empty boxes, and then I said, oh, would you like to now switch? Of course you would switch, right? Because you had a very low chance of getting it right first up, and then I've taken away all those wrong choices. But my point behind this is that you be okay with being wrong. So prepare to be wrong. So the people who make the best decisions are not the ones who always make the right decisions first, but the ones who are prepared to be wrong. Okay, so this is the second principle, which is, make a decision, but don't make it stuck in. Don't say this is now written in stone and I can't change my decision. Don't be obstinate about it. Another quotation that I share in many of my presentations. I don't do this at the start because it offends some people, so I'll do it. I think we know each other well now, even through the magic of technology. And Upton Sinclair, who's an American author, he said it's difficult to get somebody to understand something when their salary depends on them not understanding it. So there's this psychological phenomenon called confirmation bias. We're attracted to things that confirm our existing opinions, and then we're like subconsciously ignore or neglect things that are disconfirming, that are against our opinion. So if you see people saying crazy things, especially now, just understand they've got confirmation bias. So in their own heads, they've got this belief, and they're only listening to and watching the evidence that supports it. So here's this technique that will help you overcome confirmation bias and actually answers a question that somebody else asked earlier, that when you widen option, doesn't that give you a risk of slowing down your decision making. So if you want to be the decisive person, and you said already that you're either impulsive or hesitant, this technique will help you with both of those, for yourself or for your team. So the technique is called Uching. And Uching is a term from sailing, and it just means just trying something little, just having a go at something. So we might call it a prototype or a pilot project. If you've done any sort of innovation recently, innovation programs, you may have come across this idea of design thinking. So design thinking is all about, forget about what products and services you got, go back to your customers, find out what their needs are, invent a solution for them, but then try it. So test it as soon as you can. So Uching is just another word for like testing, and testing in a small way. And if you're familiar with Eric Ries's work in the Lean Startup or Agile and all of that kind of work, the recommendation there, one of the recommendations in this whole process is to create what they call a minimum viable product. So the smallest thing that's worth putting out into the world and getting feedback. So try something first and then get feedback. It's the way that apps work now. So some developer will load an app, people will download it, give them immediate feedback, and then within a week and sometimes within a day, they'll have a new version of the app available. Okay, so Uch. So when you make a decision, you may think it's a good decision and you may have got lots of options, but Uch. So do a little test, do a little pilot project or a prototype to test it and prepare to be wrong. Okay, good. So time's getting good. So Donna's talking about Schrodinger's book. Does it really exist until you've selected the box? Yeah. So this is actually, so when I do this Monty Hall experiment and I do this demo, I'm going to do this in workshops, and I'm going to have you 3 bags, and we go through this. We have a lot more of a detailed discussion around this, and it caused a lot of interesting discussion and debate. And most people kind of get it afterwards, and they understand the logic behind it, but it's still like the gut feeling is I should stick with my original choice, because all GitHub can do is it's always going to open an empty box, so it makes no difference. Right? So, and if you want to know more, just do a Google search for Monty Hall problem. You can even do these simulators, and you can run it 1,000 times, and you'll see that switching wins twice as often as not. Okay, I don't see any questions and comments coming through. Yeah, so Ash says, it's emotions easy to handle loss if it's the original choice. Yeah, so the feeling of regret is one of the things that stops us from changing decisions. And the Monty Hall problem really demonstrates that, but it happens all the time in our life, that we make a decision and then we've got so much invested in it. So you think, I've made this decision, and it then becomes part of my identity, especially if you're a leader. You don't want leaders think that their people don't want to see them making decisions and then going back on those decisions and changing the decisions. And actually, people respect leaders who change their mind when new information comes along. Okay, so there's a quotation which I can't remember who that's from, who said, when I change my mind when I get new facts. What do you do, sir? Right. So, and it's really important that we're willing to change our mind, especially in a world that's changing really fast now. We've got to be willing to be flexible and say, we made a decision. We're going to go down this path A. We've got a plan B, but we're willing to switch to it if we need to. Yeah, and the question is, does that include politicians? Absolutely. Politicians should also be changing their mind, and we will respect politicians who change their mind if they give the rationale for doing it. H says, does switching only increase your chance if you're presented with additional information? I'm thinking back to multiple choice questions, and we have no new information. Yes, so if you've got no new information, then you're still you kind of got the same original choices. The only difference is, as I said, with the flipping the coin thing, sometimes you can say, look, I'm thinking about option A, and let's call that heads. I flip the coin, it comes up heads, and I go, oh, gee, now that I'm forced to do it, maybe I don't feel so good about that. So sometimes you get more information by doing a live test of it. So you actually fire it off. You fire off the decision and you go, how would I feel having made that decision? So we'll talk about that soon as well, in a slightly different way. Okay, time's going well. So this third one here, yeah, so we spend most of our time on that one, actually, that middle one. This one here, I'm going to share with you one idea that will help you get more perspective. And so the principle in the book is about getting more distance. So the idea is, rather than saying, I'm going to sleep on it because I'll make a better decision tomorrow, the idea is to get out of your current situation and move into the future. So as a futurist, I love this process. So, and I teach it to a lot of leaders and teams when they're stuck, when they feel like they don't know what to do because they don't know what's coming up in their future. They use this process. So you're in this situation, you're in this world, you're in this scenario now, and you're thinking about what action you're going to take. Imagine what your world is going to look like 10 weeks from now, 10 months from now, and 10 years from now. Okay, so now you could change those numbers. So you could say 10 weeks from now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now. But what you do is you create these 3 future points, and then you step into each of those points and you look back. So let's imagine that. So that's 2 things, right? So first of all, it allows you to get out of where you are now, which might be stressed, anxious, unsure, uncertain. And the first thing it does, it just allows you to get a little bit more freedom by giving yourself a future perspective. But the other really useful thing for making decisions is that you can step into, so let's say we step into 10 months from now, you could imagine that future you saying, thank you, thank you, thank you to that you 10 months ago, which is now, for making the decision you did now to get me into the position I am now. And just having that future perspective can help you know what decision you're going to make at this point in the past. So it's kind of all make-believe, right? You're kind of making this up. You're kind of going, okay, I'll step into the future and then imagine what it's going to be like in the past, and that'll help me make a decision. But it absolutely does help, because you're now imagining a different version of you, looking back and saying, like a wiser version of you, looking back and saying, thank you for making that decision. So what decision did you make? Okay, I'm not going to ask you to share it in the chat room here, but it's useful for you to use this process to gain some perspective into the future. And again, I use this with leadership teams, with individuals, to help them when they're stuck, to help them get a little bit unstuck. So what they do, or what I recommend you do, is do this exercise. So look 10 months ahead, look back, and say, I'm grateful for that decision. Then in your head, make up whatever that decision was, and then ooch. So do a little test to test it out. Okay, so I hope that helps you. Any questions and comments about that one? Okay, so Jill says, great strategy. Julia says, could you inadvertently fantasize the future? Yeah, absolutely you could, but well, we're kind of all making this up, Julia. So we're all thinking about futures, and we don't exactly know what the future is going to be. And because of that, it's not useful to say that we've got or maybe we've got the wrong future, because there's no way of knowing. We get to create that future, and also sometimes circumstances create it for us. But both of those things are pretty much out of our control. So it helps us get a bit more control in the present. Okay, Cheryl likes that. Good. Aish likes that. The coin toss to stop working because I don't take my. Yeah, that's right. So if you do the coin toss thing and you know that you got the choice to change your mind later, it's it's not as useful. Okay, any others? Yeah, Rachel says we're all making it up. Yeah, it's very reassuring. And it's true, isn't it? Like, we're all making it up. We are all, everything that we're talking about here is making up what we could create for the future. And it's just giving you a couple of extra tools to give you a bit of a head start and a little bit of direction and guidance so that we can head in the future that we'd like to create for ourselves. Okay. So these are 3 things we talked about. So widening your options, so creating more options and finding more options, and be creative with this process of finding more options. Be okay with being wrong. And then, as I said, get more distance. And this is just, I shared with you one of the techniques for getting more distance. There are others as well, but that one there, I think, is the most powerful one when I've used it with groups and teams. So look, I hope you got something useful. Another thing that I often end my presentations with is this quotation from Benjamin Brewster, who says, in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice, but in practice there is. And so if you've got some good ideas today, like what sort of brand you're going to take on, identity you're going to take on, how you're going to ooch, how you're going to look into the future, you can go away and go, great, some really good ideas, but until you put them into practice, you don't really know how they're going to work for you. And so put them into practice, try them out, because they're easy to do. They don't require much physical effort, and they just require you to put a little bit of time aside and to to create this new mental reality for yourself. And we are making it up. But decision making is about thinking about the future that we don't know. So even though at the moment we've got this extreme of this uncertain future, at all times we've got this uncertain future. It's not only now, it's just now, it's everywhere and we can see it. So make some good decisions and make some well-informed decisions for yourself. If you're interested in working with me more, I've got I do a lot of keynote presenting, and I'm getting asked more to do virtual presentations, so to do live streaming to events and even running workshops like this. But also, it's starting to come back. Events have been booked for next year, so I've got a number of topics, and I've tailored them all for kind of this post-pandemic world. What your customer is going to be like, what's going to happen with AI and robotics, how we're going to create a new kind of workplace, and so on. So if you're interested, go to gihanpereira.com. Also, as I said at the start, if you're a member of the Future Ready Skills program, thank you for coming along. This is part of your ongoing learning and development. And if you're not a member and you'd like to find out about it, just go to gihansprograms.com and you can get the information about it. But basically what you get is skills development. Well, this is actually aimed at leaders for your teams. So you can send all your team members along to the ongoing present active learning that I offer, and you get access to me as well, and an access to like a growing resource center. So before I finish up, my last message for you is that, yeah, look, I think it's easy for me to say, here are some really useful skills, go off and do them, and you're fixed, everything's okay. But it's not going to be like that, and it's never going to be like that. So there's a number of people this has been attributed to. The most credible one is Ian McLaren, as far as I can tell. And he said, be kind, because everyone you meet is fighting their own battle that you know nothing about. And this is true, and especially now, as I said at the start, we're not in the same boat, we're in the same storm, but everyone has their different boats. So be kind to people, because you don't know what battle they're fighting. And I reckon the person you need to be most kind to is yourself. As you're going through this, absolutely put these ideas into action. I hope they're useful, but be okay with not being okay, and be okay with getting things wrong and then stepping back and trying again. And thank you everyone for coming along. Thank you for participating. And Aish, I'll make sure that I send the gift out to you. For everyone else, if you've got any comments, questions, if you want to get in touch with me, gihanpereira.com is a place to find me. Have a great day, stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks everyone. Bye for now.